She works full-time. He has a college degree. They both earn above minimum wage. And tonight, they're deciding which bill not to pay. This is America's invisible crisis, a new kind of poverty that doesn't look like poverty at all. It wears scrubs to the hospital. It grades papers until midnight. It delivers your packages in the rain. Welcome to the era of the working poor 2.0, people who earn too much to qualify for help, and far too little to survive. Here's what the headlines won't tell you. 61% of Americans now live paycheck to paycheck. And most of them? They're not unemployed. They're not unskilled. They're working. Today, we're exposing a crisis the government refuses to acknowledge, corporations won't address, and millions of Americans are too ashamed to admit they're part of. Because in modern America, you can do everything right and still lose. This is the new American poverty. The working poor 2.0. Let me show you a number that should make you angry. $15,060. That's the federal poverty line in 2025 for a single person. $15,000. The government looks at that number and says, if you earn more than this, you're fine. But here's reality. MIT's living wage calculator tells us an adult actually needs $44,000 to $58,000 just to cover the basics. Not a vacation. Not savings. Not retirement. Just rent, food, transportation, and healthcare. Do the math. There's a $30,000 gap between what the government thinks you need and what life actually costs. This creates a new class of Americans, financially stranded in the space between poverty and stability. The Urban Institute found that 1 in 3 workers earning $45,000 to $75,000 can't consistently afford rent, groceries, or medical care. Look around. These are your neighbors. The teacher who tutored your kids. The nurse who held your hand in the ER. The manager at your local grocery store. America's backbone isn't breaking, it's already fractured. We just haven't looked closely enough to see the cracks. The benefit cliff. Now let me tell you about one of the cruelest traps in American economics. It's called the benefit cliff, and here's how it works. You've been struggling, but you get a raise. A small one, maybe $1,000 more a year. You feel a flicker of hope. Finally, things might get easier. Then the notices arrive. Your childcare subsidy. Gone. Your food assistance. Cut. Your healthcare discount. Revoked. According to the Congressional Research Service, families routinely lose $4,000 to $9,000 in benefits when their income increases by just $1,000. Read that again. You earn $1,000 more, and become $4,000 to $9,000 poorer. Dr. Elaine Waxman from the Urban Institute calls it exactly what it is, a system where every step forward pushes families 3 steps back. So millions of workers face an impossible calculation every single day: stay poor enough to survive, or earn more and watch your family collapse financially. This isn't a safety net. It's a trap disguised as one. The cost of being American. Let's talk about what life actually costs in 2025. Rent. The median rent nationwide just hit $2,125 a month. In cities like Boston or Miami, over $3,000. That's $36,000 a year before you've eaten a single meal. Groceries. Since 2020, food prices have climbed 31%. That weekly grocery run that used to cost $100? Now it's $130, and you're buying less. Healthcare. A simple ER visit, just to be seen, averages $2,700. Even with insurance. Childcare. Families are paying $28,000 to $38,000 per year for infant care. That's more than college tuition at many state universities. Transportation, between gas, insurance, and car payments, Americans now spend over $1,100 monthly just to get to work. Add it all up, and the average worker needs $60,000 to $70,000 just to stay afloat. But remember that poverty line? Still sitting at $15,060. This isn't a mismatch. It's a chasm. And millions of Americans are falling through it every single day, completely invisible to the metrics that claim to measure poverty. The real stories. Let me introduce you to 3 people who represent millions. Michelle, medical assistant, Texas. Michelle earns $52,000 a year. By government standards, she's solidly middle class. But after rent, food, gas, and childcare, she ends every month $140 in the red. She told us, "I work 40 hours a week. I shouldn't be choosing between rent and my son's asthma medication. But that's exactly what I did last Tuesday." Daniel, high school science teacher, California. Daniel has a master's degree and teaches the next generation of Americans. 3 nights a week, he sleeps in his car because he can't afford rent on a teacher's salary. He showers in the faculty locker room before his students arrive. Sarah, ICU nurse, Florida. Sarah makes $34 an hour saving lives in the ICU. She spends 62% of her income on rent alone. When we asked her about savings, she laughed. Savings? I'm trying to figure out if I can afford to get my car inspected this month. These aren't cautionary tales. These aren't worst-case scenarios. This is America. Right now. For millions. The middle-class mirage. We still talk about the middle class like it's real. Like it's attainable. A house with a yard. A reliable car. Some savings. Maybe a vacation every few years. Retirement that doesn't involve working until you die. That was the promise. But the Federal Reserve's 2024 data reveals something darker. 57% of Americans cannot cover a $1,000 emergency. Not won't, can't. 32% have $0 saved. Nothing. And here's the part that should terrify you. 45% of people earning over $100,000 live paycheck to paycheck. 6 figures. And there's still one crisis away from financial ruin. The middle class isn't shrinking. It's already gone. What remains is a psychological illusion, a label we cling to because admitting the truth is too painful. Being middle class is no longer about what you have. It's about what you're desperately trying not to lose. Why America refuses to update its poverty line. So, here's the obvious question: why doesn't the government just update the poverty line? Because the truth is expensive. If America raised the poverty threshold to reflect actual living costs, here's what would happen. Tens of millions more Americans would suddenly qualify for assistance. The federal budget would need hundreds of billions in additional funding. The government would have to admit the American dream is collapsing. Corporations would be exposed for paying wages that trap workers in poverty. A 2024 Brookings analysis calculated that an honest poverty line would classify 41% of American workers as economically insecure. Politically, that's a catastrophe. So, the definition stays frozen in 1963, when rent was $100 a month and a gallon of milk cost 25 cents. The poverty line isn't outdated by accident. It's outdated by design. Because updating it would mean confronting a truth America isn't ready to face. We've built an economy that only works for some. And everyone else is just surviving. The psychological cost of the new poverty. Money problems don't just empty your wallet. They hollow you out. The American Psychological Association found that 82% of working Americans experience financial anxiety weekly. Nearly half report depression directly linked to money struggles. 35% lose sleep over bills and debt. But here's what makes this crisis particularly cruel: people blame themselves. Dr. Scott Galloway calls this the era of economic shame, where people internalize structural failures as personal ones. You didn't get the promotion, so you blame yourself. You can't afford your rent, so you feel like a failure. Your kid needs new shoes, but you're short on cash, and the guilt eats at you. But this isn't personal failure. It's systemic design. The system isn't broken, it's working exactly as intended. And millions of Americans are drowning in shame for being unable to beat a game that was rigged from the start. The future. Let me paint you a picture of 2030 if nothing changes. Homeownership will drop below 55%, meaning half of Americans will rent forever, building wealth for landlords instead of themselves. Rent will devour 40 to 50% of the average worker's income, making saving virtually impossible. The gig economy will replace stable jobs entirely: no benefits, no security, no future. Retirement will be a fantasy reserved for the wealthy. Everyone else will work until they physically can't anymore. And that poverty line? It'll still be based on 1963 economics, still ignoring reality, still rendering millions invisible. The working poor won't be the exception. They'll be the majority. This isn't speculation. This is trajectory. The lesson. The new American poverty isn't about laziness. It's not about bad decisions or lack of ambition. It's about a system built for a different era, frozen in time while the cost of life accelerated beyond recognition. The lesson is painfully simple: a nation cannot call itself prosperous when its workers cannot afford to live. The American dream isn't dead. But it's being priced out of existence, month by month, bill by bill, crisis by crisis. If we want to fix this, America must first face an uncomfortable truth. Millions of hardworking people aren't failing the system. The system is failing them. And until we admit that, until we stop blaming individuals for structural collapse, nothing will change. The question isn't whether Americans are working hard enough. The question is, when will the country they're working for start working for them?